Around 50 members of the Hebrew Israelites community of Dimona in southern Israel have been told that they must leave the country by September 23rd for the lack of legal status in Israel. Now, that deadline has passed already, but they were told that they would risk foreseeable deportation by the immigration police. In response to appeals asking to be allowed to stay, the Interior Ministry Population and Immigration Authority wrote to each family that neither residency in Israel for a long period nor work in the country were sufficient grounds for a change of status. The deadline has passed and they're fighting to stay. And now we want to find out where this case stands with ASHRIEL Moore. He's a spokesperson of the Dimona Hebrew Israelite community. Thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thank you and good evening. And good evening to all of our viewing audience.
I understand some of those people were born in Israel, and some of them have served in the IDF. On what ground is Israel deporting them?
Well, I wouldn't say that some of them were born in Israel. The great majority of them were born in Israel. From 51 of them, 30 were born in Israel. You have those who family members served in the military. You have those who have been operating in various capacities within Israel and given of themselves for over 30 years in Israel. And the grounds that the Ministry of Interior is standing on now is the fact that they've been in Israel for a very long time, but they have never been given the proper status in Israel. Although we submitted over 10 times requests to settle their status here in Israel, even prior to some of the children being born in Israel. But because of negligence and because of pure, disability, probably from the ministry to be able to settle these cases, they just didn't do anything with them. And starting in April 2019, once we requested once again to somehow find some kind of resolution to this, as opposed to receiving a resolution, we received deportation notes.
But what differentiates that certain group of people from the rest of the community? Why them?
Nothing differentiates them besides the fact that they fell between the cracks. Over the periods of time when there were settlements of the cases for the Hebrew Israelite community, there were just people who didn't make the cut. On one hand, some of the ministers just didn't stay in office for long enough. For example, Avram Faraz, he was just in office for about 2 years. Then you had Gideon Saar in 2014, who was in office just for 1 year. And every minister who came after, they did not continue with whatever had begun with the former minister. And as a result of that, we found ourselves in a situation where we need to start the process over again each time, as opposed to just completing it and allowing these people to continue to live their lives as regular human beings here in Israel.
That sounds so frustrating. What is the status of the case right now?
Well, currently we're going to be submitting an injunction. We have up until the 6th of October to submit the injunction to the Court of Appeals. We're not going to be dealing with the Ministry of Interior anymore because there's no reason for us to continue to discuss anything with those who have a very clear agenda to simply kick people out of the country after 30, 40 years, even people who were born here, to separate them from their families, to send them back to a country where the majority of them have never been in their lives, and to just, bother the human construct of the community. But what we are going to do as well, in addition to submitting injunctions, we're going to continue to fight this. We're going to fight it in the legal realm. We're going to fight it in the political realm. We'll continue to try and build a coalition of politicians, ministers who support our cause and who have a very humane understanding of people who are looking to give to Israel and who have 53 years of experience of service to Israel in every capacity possible, in addition to 100% induction into the military. We're sure that there are people out there who are humane enough to be able to assist us, and we're going to continue to call on those people to assist us.
ASHRIEL, I just before we part, I hear you, and I really hope that this case will get settled very soon, and those people could stay in Israel. Before we part, I do want to ask you to say a few words about your community, because I'm sure a lot of our viewers don't know much about the Israelite community in Dimona. Can you tell our viewers in a few words about your community, what makes you special?
We trace our roots back to the ancient Hebrew Israelites, who Abraham was the father of our nation. We trace our roots back to the ancestral connection to the tribe of Judah. As such, we are Jews or Judeans. And the history shows that in 70 AD, when we were dispersed from this land and kicked out by the Romans, we migrated to North Africa, and then from North Africa to West Africa. And we're taken in 1442 into the Americas and the Isles of the Sea to be slaves. In 1966, the reawakening happened once the leader of our community, His Excellency Ben Ami Ben Israel, had the vision during which the angel Gabriel revealed to him that it was time to come back and to reestablish ourselves back in Israel. And in 1967, the largest group of African-American Hebrew Israelite Jews began the return back to Israel after more than 400 years of slavery and 2,000 years of exile. And we've been here ever since.